You ready, huh, Robbie? Okay, greetings and salutations. I'd like to welcome everyone to another session here at Design for Living Big Book Study. I am an alcoholic. My name is Bill. Paulie just popped on. Happy birthday, Paul. I can't use his last name because then we would have to kill him. We don't want to kill him. We're anonymous here. We have our good friend Chrissy F. from Massachusetts all the way in. I want to read something out of the last page of the instructions through step 11. And here's what it says, the very second last paragraph. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. So what I want to do is, my interpretation of that starts on page 84, and it goes through 88. I try and read those pages every day, at the very least 86 through 88, and follow the instructions. It tells me what to do, and we're going to go over it. But isn't it interesting that I get to the end of the 11th step? Simple but not easy, a price had to be paid. The book tells me it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, but be careful, because alcohol is a subtle foe. And we get done with all that work, and the book says we are still undisciplined. So we need to be discipled. We need to be tutored. We need to be sponsored by the spiritual advisor, the spiritual sponsor. We're going to tell us how to get there. Chrissy, you want to come in and say hello real quickly?
Hi, everyone. Chrissy, alcoholic. Happy to be here. Do you want me to say more? Sorry. I was just saying hello. Go ahead, Bill.
You follow instructions. That's a good thing. If you can do that, you can get through this thing. Most of us can't. We come up with our own idea, like Ford Motor Company. Okay, so we're on page 84, and I was studying something, and I want to maybe even get some interpretation at the end of the meeting. We're probably not going to go but halfway through this meeting. Usually we burn up all the time. Then we let you guys stay at the end and ask your questions and comment. But I thought, that's not fair. This is a long, big book study. It's been going on for almost a year now, and we're in step 10. So are these extravagant promises? We think not. This is coming after the 9th step. I bring this up. It's not part of our lesson today. It's just, for instance, we think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. And then all of a sudden it says this thought. Is it the thought that we think these are not extravagant promises? Is the thought that they will always materialize if we work for them? What is that thought? But this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we have cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. So the first thing, it uses the word continue 4 times in this one paragraph describing the instructions for step 10. To continue implies that we have begun something. If I'm going to continue on a journey, it means I've started. If I'm going to continue to take inventory, it means at one time in my life I have taken inventory, which we did in step 4. Notice that the word vigorously is used again. It was used in step 4 when it says, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action. Rob will post the pages. I'm not as good as him and Najee, but it's in there, believe me. And so they're talking about a vigorous action. It requires effort and energy, determination, because what we're going to do is, what happens is we've cleaned a channel. By this time, we begin making amends, which is the final portion of cleaning this channel, the things that we discovered that were blocking us in step 4 from carrying out our 3rd step decision, and a whole lot of other things may be blocked from companionship, compatibility with people, employability, love, God, peace of mind, serenity, everything that self blocks me from. What we've done is we've kind of loosened that up. We liken that to barnacles on a boat. We scraped them off, but guess what? They're still in the water, and we got to get them out of the water, or they're going to reattach themselves. So what happens is we share it with someone. That's part of the casting out, the expelling. We become entirely ready for God to remove them. Why would we want to hang on something that's going to weigh us down? We humbly ask him, and now we've got a list of people that we've harmed, and we go out to make amends. We might have, like we talked about last week, if you finish your fifth step at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, by the end of the day, you're on steps 10 and 11. If I'm following the description precisely in this book, which it tells me I am, I may have only made a couple amends on the first day. That I may have made none, but I'm prepared. And I need to still continue. I might have made it with the family. It might not start till the day after I take my fifth step, but it's going to begin. And it says, as we cleaned up the past, we're to continue to do certain things. We're looking for the things that block us. Remember, it was a good friend Maura and I looked up watch for, and it means to be in anticipation of. It doesn't mean to wait till it gets there, although most of us wait till it gets there. And what it's saying is to watch for the things. I know as soon as I get a knot in my gut because someone's not doing what I think they should. That's like danger, Will Robinson from Lost in Space. It means if I open my mouth, I'm going to say something that I probably shouldn't. So immediately, if I like the person enough to salvage the relationship, Rob, immediately I ask God to relieve me of the bondage of self, because that's what it is. Most of the time, when I get angst up, it's with someone who irritates me to begin with, or I wouldn't be angst up. And then guess what I got to do? I got to ask God to remove it. And when I don't ask him to remove it, I got to call someone and tell them what I did. Then I got to make amends quickly for what I've done. Then I've got to resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can help. Notice the verbs that they're using, and they're the action words. Immediately, at once, continue, vigorously. These are words that say, guess what? Don't let this stuff sit there and settle, because I'll tell you what, you give me enough minutes for me to be irritated with someone who I don't like to begin with, and I can justify what I did. The only problem with that is I can't get it to live in that new cavern for long, because I've invited the spirit, and this is experience. What happens is, and we'll get to it when we get to this 11th step over here on the next page. Usually I'm woken up in the middle of the night. And when I can't sleep 2 or 3 nights in a row, when I get up early after I've only had 3 hours of sleep, I know that God's saying, hey, you're dirtying up the house that I'm living in after we've cleaned it up. And I pay attention to that because it's easy to do. It's not an overnight matter. This should continue for our lifetime. Remember, in step 4, it says a business which takes no regular inventory. An alcoholic which takes no regular inventory usually gets drunk. The business goes broke. If we get drunk, for us to drink is to die. So it's maybe even more important that we take inventory than that Sam Walton takes inventory. And he might have a lot more financially at stake than we do, but our very lives are on the line. Okay. All right, Chrissy, go ahead. That's good for me. I've said enough.
Oh my goodness. Just so many things just came to me while you were talking. I love that. You know, how I treated the steps is how I treated people in my relationships, you know, like one and done. Thank you, ma'am. You know, bam, bam. Thank you, ma'am. It's not like that with the steps. This is a relationship, and it's like something that we have to continue working at for a lifetime. That's what Bill just said. But I don't want to put in the effort. So we have to learn how vital and important this is, because faith without works is dead. That's what the book tells us. And so we are learning how to recognize what needs to be seen as it's coming, like watching the watchtower people actually look out, they see the enemy coming, and then they warn everybody else. You actually see the enemy coming before it comes for the attack. So that's what we're doing is we're seeing the attack on its way, but then we're built up and we are protected. It's safe and protected with, you know, this new way of life where it says we're asking God, praying for God's power and will and way of life. And so we are armed and prepared. And it's an everyday deal, because every day we have to, every day we're going to be tested the page, what is it? Page 15 of Bill's story says, we won't survive the certain trials and low spots ahead unless we perfect and enlarge our spiritual life through self-sacrifice and work for others. And so when it says the promises on page 84, the promises will materialize if we work for them. So we're learning what the work is that's required of us. If we want to see the good stuff, the promises and the hope, we have to do our part, and the more we stay close to him and perform his works well, that's when we are where God provides what we need and remarkable things follow. So that's what the 10th step is all about. It's keeping the line open so that we are constantly staying in conscious contact, like the 11th step, which is coming next, which I think might be a good segue in. Go ahead, Bill.
You very much. You brought up something real important. That word tested just activated something in me. We have people running around saying, God tests me. I don't think God tests me at all. He knows I won't pass the test. He created me. However, and the 2 pages before which you were talking about Bill's story on page 13, he says, I was to test my new God consciousness within my thinking. I test my thinking. God doesn't test me. Now I bring it in line with his and said, hey, does this fit with what we're trying to do? And I skipped one important thing. It says we have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding. I believe that's of that world. And effectiveness, I believe that's in this world. And that's where it said, this is not an overnight matter. I don't go up into the kingdom and get downloaded a thing for the rest of my life. I need to be like a camel. Twice a day it gets to its knees, picks up its load, and can go a whole day without a drink. Get up in the morning, ask for the assignment, watch throughout the day to make sure I'm carrying out the assignment, check it at the end of the day to make sure that I didn't skimp or trick myself into believing that I carried out the assignment. And if I came up short, I'll take care of it immediately and then I start the day fresh. Now it gives us some promises that we call. My favorite promise is the one I just read. We have entered the world of the spirit. But what it says at the bottom of page 84, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. I'm not treading booze. I can only tread for so long, and I tread lightly. I usually go down for a sip when I get tired. I'm not fighting it anymore. And here's why. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We described a couple types of temptations. Temptation is all of a sudden, I think I'm getting thirsty on a hot summer day and a beer would be nice. And I say, stop it. Water will quench your thirst. Beer will create a greater thirst. You might as well just get the whiskey if you're going to do that. And that'll dry you out. So that's, guess what? Non-productive. The other thing is somebody offers us a drink at a function, a party, a wedding, a luncheon. That's temptation. Whether or not I'm inspired to act on the temptation, I'm going to act sanely and normally. I'm not going to duck under the table and say, oh my God, that's alcohol. The enemy's out to get me. And I'm not going to smack it out of their hand. It's not the boogeyman. It has no power over me at this point. I've been restored to sanity in this moment. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are neither fighting it nor are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality. I can rev the engine all I want, but I'm not heading towards the drink or away from it. I'm in a pretty good space. I might want to turn the engine off though, because I'm burning up a lot of fuel. Safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. I did not remove the problem. Something other than me, something different than me, something greater than me has removed the problem. That's interesting. If you had a physical defect, not saying that something's missing on your body, but say you have a growth and you go to one of those dermatologist people that laser it off, what they do is they remove the defect, they remove the problem. It does not exist. However, guess what? Some things grow back even when they're removed. Isn't that right, Rob? Some defects can grow back if I'm not careful. What you guys call defects of character that I called my strong suit, my sponsor called them weapons of mass destruction. If I'm not paying attention to the four things that it talks about to watch for, you put me in a position today to get scared, and I'm liable to open my big mouth because I get like a bully when I get scared. I've told you guys that before. My poor sister, she's on this meeting. I won't put her out there and mention her name, but she knows it. Sometimes she says, "Don't you love me anymore?" I said, "Who said I ever loved you to begin with?" The point of the matter is, sometimes when I'm steeped in self, I want to run my big mouth and take it out on someone. I got to continue to watch for that because guess what? If that is fed and fueled, even though the problem's been removed, they get blocked from the removal. And all of a sudden, Bill Swan's getting thirsty again. And I don't want to get thirsty no more. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. I don't run around. What did Bill Wilson say? Now I could laugh at the Jim Mills. I don't run into a bar and shake my fist at the bottle and say, "See, I told you I would overcome." Because eventually, if I hang out in the bar long enough, they're going to have me drinking rum long before I'm going to have them drinking coffee. We're neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep a fit spiritual condition. Keep in mind, they're telling us the we at this time. If I haven't done the work, I am not part of the we. Sometimes I can read this and get lost in the narrative and think, oh my God, I'm on the other side of step 9 and all I've done is read the book. And what it tells us earlier in chapter 3, more about alcoholism, is some of us have read inspirational books which inspire me. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is an inspirational book until I put it into practice and it becomes a life-changing book. And boop, boop. Go ahead, Chrissy.
That's great. Driven by 100 forms of fear. Looks like we fight, we avoid, we get cocky, or we're afraid. That's what it looks like. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-seeking, self-delusion, self-pity, all those things. But when we have fit spiritual condition, I love what Bill just said. I don't want to do the work, but I want to be a part of the we. Yeah, that's how I feel about relationships too. I want to have a relationship, but I don't want to do the work. I just want to enjoy the good stuff. So we have to, I keep saying we have to. You don't have to anything, by the way. You can do anything you want. For me, unless I start to be motivated by 100 forms of God, God's power, God's love, and God's way of life, whatever God's will for me is, and we learn these spiritual principles that we strive to live by, we practice these principles in all our affairs. These principles, which we're learning about as we go: love, patience, tolerance, kindness, helpfulness to others, unselfishness. I can't think of any more, but so this is the transition. When we are seeking God, God could and would, if he were sought. The ABCs on page 60, God could and would relieve me of my alcoholism if I sought God. And so I have to look for this power and love of God in all things, and I have to do these work. I have to practice demonstrating God's will. So I have to learn what God's will for me is. And I'm going to send it back to you, Bill.
Thank you. And one thing real quick in the instruction where it says we have commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past, I believe the word as there almost means while. I don't want to give the impression that we wait till we're all done with our 9-step amends, which some of us may never finish. If you've offended as many people as I have, and you tell me I don't have to start step 10 till I finish step 9, I got me a 9-step program. But what it's saying is we do it as. And isn't it interesting that they don't give us the code till step 10, love and tolerance of others? Because I wouldn't know what to do with it. Before I take a 4th step, I'm blaming everyone for the condition of my life anyhow, and hating the world, hating God, and hating myself. When all of a sudden I begin to realize that number 1, some people are sick. Number 2, our troubles of our own making, and now I see evidence of it in my 4th step and share it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then I realize that if I don't want to get in that trick bag again, I need to be loving and tolerant to the best of I guess my capacity at the time. I don't want to say ability because I have a much greater ability than I use. Okay. And interestingly enough, we had one paragraph of instructions. We're going to have a couple more sentences of instructions. And like Chrissy said, most of this is transitionary. It's telling us what's taking place, theoretical or whatnot. But the instructions we read already. Then it says it is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. Laurels are past accomplishments, a wreath that they used to give out in the Greek and Roman or whatever, whoever the hell the gladiators were, they put a wreath. But guess what? Practice makes perfect. LeBron James, if he stops practicing for a year, he is not going to be the GOAT. That's debatable, but I mean, I don't watch much news and I'm not into sports, but I'm from Cleveland. He's from Akron. We're 20 minutes apart. I'm going to give him that title so someone proves otherwise. But if he stops practicing, guess what? If he rests on his laurels, what's going to happen is you're going to get some other young gun come along from Chicago. And all of a sudden, the Bulls are going to beat the Cavaliers again. And we don't like that, especially when we're up 3-0 and we lose the series. What? Okay, stop it now, Bill Swan. Let's get back to recovery. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Here we go again. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How do we get that? Understanding and effectiveness in the realm of the spirit. How can I best serve thee? That's a question I ask him. Thy will. Now, I like that they put not mine in parentheses because are you kidding me? Do you really think God ever considers doing my will over his own? But we'll humor ourselves because we're alcoholics. Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. And someone brought it to my attention that the reason these thoughts must go with us constantly is because we constantly think we're running the show. We forget sometimes that we gave that up somewhere before step 3. We can exercise, excuse me, our willpower along this line all we wish. You can apply that will to that, and that's in alliance with God's will. It's in alignment. I'm operating, I'm working with him, not against him. I'm not in self-will. I'm seeking God's will, and I'm trying to carry out what I believe is the efficient or effective manner as such. That's the proper use of the will. I'll read one more paragraph, Chrissy, and then I'll give it to you. Wait, you know what? Let's go. You go come in here because this is a transition period into 11.
Okay, bottom of 85. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him, capital H him, who has all knowledge and power. Here's the conditions, so long as if we have carefully followed directions, and that's like Bill read at the very beginning, like we're undisciplined, we don't actually follow the directions, we don't obey, we don't want to like take the guidance and actually follow through with that. So we have, it says, so long as if we carefully follow directions, we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. And that's like when we are in the 11th step and we are seeking conscious contact, that's the vital sixth sense. It's not like what I'm thinking or what I'm seeing or what I'm feeling or believing, but it's like this, you know that you're being guided, you know that you're receiving, you can tell the difference. It's more like I'm being given some wisdom here, and we get better at that over time. Anyways, I don't think I'm going to try to elaborate on that anymore. Do you want to say anything else, Bill, before I
Just
keep
a
reading?
couple things.
Yeah, good.
I just wanted to note that develop, when I looked it up, means to grow or to advance growth. You know, you think of development of a picture is what happens is the longer it's set in that solution that they developed the old pictures that you took out of a Polaroid or a camera. more would come alive into life. So this is not just developing over time, but it's developing period. It's causing to grow or to continue. And then we've become, to some extent, we have become God conscious, but we must go further. I believe that where we're going further, and we talked about it last week, further being a different plane, whereas farther is distance. It's distance in this realm. Further is advancement, development into that other realm, the realm of the spirit, where we have entered into that over there at the beginning of step 10, but we must go further. We've got to go deeper. That
Yeah,
means
it's
more
really
action. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
just to highlight what you just said. It is our tendency as a maybe alcoholic or just somebody who's a perfectionist. It's like, I didn't get it perfect, I might as well just quit because I think I'm supposed to already be there when really I'm just beginning. So just remember, we're beginning, ing in the present tense. It's happening. We are growing. We are just beginning, and it's going to get greater and better and more, and it'll be easier, faster, and just let yourself know that we're just starting. This is just a new way of life, and we're practicing because we're just beginning. Go ahead, Bill.
I told you guys I don't use the word recovered. I like recovering. If that's the case, that's continuing. However, that's debatable. We already defined recovered last week. They have nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. But as we've discovered in the 12 and 12, there's a whole lot of other problems that we haven't solved yet. So let's keep moving forward. And interestingly enough, and I'm convinced of this, that if I stayed on top of step 10, I would never have to pray or meditate. I believe I made this statement, and I think I believe it. That what happens is, as long as I keep that channel clean, my life becomes prayerful and I get into a meditative state. What's flowing in and out of me is the spirit. Like it says, we've begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. And interestingly enough, step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy of this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. Before we turn the page, the term prayer and meditation is used in the descriptive 11th step that we read at the beginning of the meetings you see up on the window shades. That is not the instructions. It is the action taken by the people who wrote the book, and it's a description thereof. So it's kind of like looking at the ingredients on a box of cake. It's just the ingredients. It doesn't tell me what to do with them, but now it's going to tell me what to do with this ingredient. We're going to call it ingredient 11. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. And constructively, just so you know, I looked that up today. That means having a benefit. It's not always building upon, but it's something that's constructive. But not only that, it's not tearing me down, but it's actually benefiting me. So it's not a neutral thing. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? I used to answer yes to all these questions and thought I was doing good till I realized we're supposed to be saying no at this point. Nonetheless, do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? I think when Paul sends it over, my good friend Paul sends over, there's like 10 questions there. I guess I didn't count them, but I will when Chrissy's commenting. But what I'm doing is I'm asking for the resurgence of self. Am I paying attention to what's going on? Importantly, this, as I said last week, that I believe that this review of this step 11 nightly review serves at least a threefold purpose. The first one is, if I didn't catch something in step 10, I get to clean it up right now so that I don't have to bring any more old baggage into this day today. I cleaned it up last night. If not, that's not to say that I'm gonna call someone if I retire at the end of the day and it's midnight and I know you go to bed at 8 o'clock in the evening, I might not call you to make amends till first thing in the morning, as long as I'm willing to do that. So what it is if I haven't done something in step 10, I'm willing to make it right either right now or as soon as possible. Number two, is I carry out the assignment that I'm about to ask for in the next paragraph on awakening. And number three, am I having to exercise the amend portion of step 10 more today than I was the day before and the day before that? Because if that's the case, I'm not watching for something, either that or something got away with me 3 days ago that's starting to exacerbate or metastasize. I mean, this is a great indication. And you know what the crazy thing is? It's the easiest of all the action out of these two steps to do. And this is the one I overlook because sometimes my days go so well that I just go right to sleep. But I promise you this, there isn't a day that's gone by that I've ever walked on water or been perfect. That doesn't mean that I've horrified someone's life to where I can't live with myself. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep this channel clean. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. Remember, this is constructive, not destructive, not fatal, not harmful. It would diminish our usefulness to others. And remember, our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend on our constant thought of how we may meet other people's needs. In other words, how can I be useful? And if I'm beating myself up again for being human, for making a mistake, for falling short because we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, none of us achieve sainthood, then guess what? Don't diminish, don't take the gift God gave you and put it under a bushel basket because you had a day where you got to put an X on the board. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness. Why would I ask for God's forgiveness? Because really, if I hurt you or cut out any of these things, I affect my relationship with Him. And now that's become the most important relationship I have. And inquire what corrective measures should be taken. And I promise you, if they're telling me to inquire, then they're pretty certain I'm going to get an answer like it says on page 164, if my house is in order. Come on, Chrissy.
That's good stuff. I was just thinking, what you're describing is that constructive review. If you look back on page 70, it talks about, we're going to fall short, we're going to stumble. What happens? Are we going to drink? Maybe, it depends. And it says it depends on our motives. And it says if we're sorry for what we've done and we have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. So that's one way I could live my life. Another way could be like beat myself up, do that whole self-loathing, prideful, like morbid reflection, all of that other stuff, self-pity thing. So we're just defining when, and I'm doing like that self-will thing, or am I seeking and performing God's will? God's will isn't to harp on the past and use it as a weapon to condemn. It's more like, how can I grow and how can I be greater? So when it says we have the desire to let God take us to better things, and then the instructions actually say we pray for the right ideal and guidance in each questionable situation. We pray for sanity and strength to do the right thing. It's telling us what to do. And so it's kind of like everywhere in the book, it's repeating the same message. It's like seeking God's will for us, praying for the strength to carry that out, to do His bidding, and the 11th step constructive review is just for us to, how can I be better today? Like progress, the spiritual progress, how it works says, we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. But if you continue to quit, give up, kind of like I said, I treat like my program like I treat a relationship. I just give up, I quit, it's too much, I want to run away. I don't want to do the work, and I move away from instead of leaning more and more in to God. So back to you, Bill.
All right, I want to pause for the cause. I want to take a group conscience because I told you guys I want to leave you time to talk. I hate to go on a meeting and listen to someone else run their mouth the whole time, although that's how these big book compendiums are set up. I also take into account that some of us get inspired and want to share. Do you guys want to stop there, or do you want us to conclude the instructions for step 11? Totally up to you by a show of hands, or. All right, let me do it democracy here. By a show of hands, who would like to stop now and you guys come in and talk or ask questions? Okay.
All right,
There's
let's
no
go.
there's no stenographer here, but for the record of the recording people, we had no hands.
No hands.
No hands. Okay.
That's good because we're on upon awakening, right? I
Yep,
mean,
yep,
we
yep.
got to finish this deal.
Yep.
So you wake up.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure. On awakening, and this is very important what I'm about to share, at least it is for me. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. I was always reading this chronologically, Chrissy. So in other words, that was instruction 1, instruction 2, and here comes instruction 3. Before we begin, and I always thought they meant beginning was me to go out and face the day. We ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest or self-seeking motives. What I discovered is, or what it was came to me in a revelation a couple of weeks ago, is that I'm supposed to ask for that divorcement before I think about the 24 hours ahead, before I consider my plans for the day. Why would you say that, Bill Swan? Well, here's why, because my thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when my thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So if I'm asking God to take the wrong motives or to yield to prevent me from those, then when I'm thinking about the 24 hours ahead, when I'm considering my plans for the day, I'm going to have a higher sense of awareness, or at least a heightened plane, to where all of a sudden, guess what? That thing that I was pretty sure I had to get done today, that which interfere with me going to a meeting or calling my sponsee back, it might not be as important to God as I'm making it to me. And he might say, you know what, that's not important to either of us, you idiot. You're just doing what you've always done, so let's move forward. Okay. Now, under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. God gave us brains to use. We're entrusted with brains. The mind of Christ, I tell my brother I have, he laughs at me, but he's entrusted me with a brain that runs my entire life. What's up in that computer control tower? What am I doing with it? Am I keeping it clean, or am I feeding it that garbage I used to feed it when I was in the grip of this thing called alcoholism? What am I putting into my senses, Rob? The ones that stimulate the inside from without. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. What used to be the hunch. See, when they start that sentence at the top of the page and the other one continued a thought, I don't know if that's a new paragraph, but if it was, the last one would be short, so I'm going to assume we're continuing here. When what used to be the hunch for the occasional inspiration gradually, it does not happen instantaneously, becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption, the presumption that I'm being inspired at all times, in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. That's a higher plane. It's not one of instinct, it's one of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. Go ahead, Christy.
I just thinking my motives versus God's will. My motives are what I want, what I need, when I want it, and how I want it. You know, it's like the motives matter. And so I love that you just highlighted first, we pray first, because there's that motto you see in bumper stickers and on the wall, first things first, first things first. I mean, there's a origin to that, seek first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, but also we ask God. That's what it says. We pray first. We ask God first. Then we go about our day. You know, I can promise you, when I interact with a sponsee and I get reactive in what I want to say and I forget to ask God first, it goes a very different way. And I start to get edgy, irritated, intolerant, impatient, unkind, all those like sick in self ways that we live when we're driven by the 100 forms of fear and self. And then if I remember to like say, hey, let's say a prayer, let's bring God in first, and then we'll go about this. Those are instructions for life. It's not just like the 11th step for us in the morning. It's throughout the day, constantly. We use it all the time, and we use it, meaning conscious contact with God all the time. Yeah, that's what it is for me when we use it all the time. So beautiful. Thy will be done. Go ahead, Bill.
And it's also, these are sometimes construed as promises and directions. We relax and take it easy. That's either an instruction or something that takes place. Depends on how you look at it. We don't struggle. Does it say we don't struggle as a directive, or we don't struggle because we don't have to anymore? We're often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. So someone also brought to my attention that this is a daily thing. So when it says we have just made conscious contact with God, I know over time I have, because I wasn't doing it before I started doing it. But even so, when I wake up in the morning, I'm not as alert as I am maybe a cup of coffee or 2 cups of coffee, and 3 hours later, I might be paying attention. So it might be growing throughout the day as well as throughout my life. Keep that in mind. And there was one more thing I want to say here. Sure, I'll forget what it is now, right? Okay, I don't know what it was. All right, here we go. Let's move forward. Oh, here's what I was saying. So the idea of, if you notice, it hasn't told us once in any of this reading for the instructions for 10 or 11, but more specifically 11. I'm Morris is skiing. It has not told us once to quiet our minds, does it? It's telling us to focus, to think, to direct our thinking towards, to raise our thinking. It's not telling us the meditation that took place in the 50s and 60s when they discovered LSD and Timothy Leary and Ram Dass. They're talking about a idea of meditation back when Bill was writing this. The best example was given by our good friend Bob Darrell out of Vegas. When he said he looked it up, it was almost a meditative state, meaning that a general was preparing to go to battle. And what he would do is purview or survey his arsenal. Is one of the guys that's going out to war, is he getting ready? Is his wife at home ready to give birth to a child? Because he'll be useless out there. His mind will be back on the birth. Is there someone who's sick? Is the horse's leg damaged? Do we have one that's one eye is blind? What happens is he surveys his platoons, or whatever they're called in that thing, and he takes out the ones that are not saleable. He wants to put his best foot forward. If he wants to win the battle, he's got to send out his best. You don't put in the second string or the third string at the Super Bowl, at least not here in the United States, Rob. I don't know what they have in Canada, mate. So so the meditation is not about quieting the mind, it's about focusing the mind. And so sometimes you'll hear in a meeting, And I've been in plenty of meetings where someone says, I was thinking, and everyone starts laughing and joking as if it's a bad thing. If someone is in the 11th step assignment and they say they've been thinking, I pay very close attention because the thought that they get might come directly from the kingdom. They might be being inspired, and I don't want to miss it because I ain't got time to get all my inspiration. I got to get some from you guys. We usually conclude the period of meditation with the prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. Well, I didn't see why so easily. I thought maybe if God gave me the Powerball or the Mega Million numbers, or at least help me to win, I could help a whole lot of people. I think what I see over time is number one, if I'm supposed to have something, I'll get it and I'll earn it. I don't need it to be won in the lottery. Number two, God does not work for me. And I think we need to know that position. What I do is ask each day what I can do for him, not what he can do for me. And the worst case scenario is just say that I got what I wanted. I might think that God's in the prayer answering business specifically for Bill Swan. Or the worst case scenario, like I said, when my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's way back, maybe 12, 15 years. Some of the members of my home group said, do you want us to pray that God heals your mother? I said, absolutely not. They said, why not? Don't you love your mother and want her to be healed? I said, absolutely, I do. But if God doesn't do what I ask, I might start to doubt the power of God. And the book says we had to stop that. And number two, more importantly, I might get mad at God. And who am I going to turn to for comfort when my mom passes, which she did 3 months ago yesterday? Or will I start not believing in God again? Very dangerous territory for me to think the Creator works for me. I'm the creation. He's the potter. I'm the clay. The clay doesn't tell the potter what to do. Pinocchio shows up for his assignment after his nose goes back to the way it was. Come on, Chrissy.
When we follow those instructions, we ask for freedom from self-will. It's the same as the third step prayer. You know, we pray, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me, relieve me, relieve me, liberate me, free me, right? Freedom. Relieve me of the bondage of self. Why? That I might better do thy will. So it's all about asking for God's will over self. What my will, by the way, is another word for that is choice. So Chrissy's choices or God's choices. Which one am I going to follow? And my life changes and things are very different when I seek God's will. And so that's just another, I mean, everything is repetitive, but it always comes back to the basic recipe. You know, faith without works is dead, but God, we ask for the instructions or the directions, and then we become willing to follow them. We stay close to him and perform his work well. And you're going to see that in all different words and versions throughout the entire book. And that's just another one. We ask to be freedom from self-will. So, and then it says, but it's okay if others will be helped. And we're praying for unselfish ends, not for selfish ends. So we're thinking about others and we're contributing to life. It's this whole new relationship with life, with others, with people. And instead of trying to have that selfish, what I want, what I need, how I'm going to do it, we seek for how can I contribute to life? What can I pack into the stream of life? What is it that I can go out there and contribute to God's universe, God's economy? And the irony is when I do that, I can relax and take it easy. You know, like Bill said, it's either a promise or it's an instruction. And usually if I pray, seek God's will, and perform his work well, the byproducts are the fruit of the Spirit. I do have peace. I do feel like there's peace and harmony. I am able to experience the kindness and the what are all those other fruits of the spirit. But it's like the fruit of the spirit comes because I'm connected. I am consciously contacting God of my understanding, and when I'm connected, I actually bear fruit. So it's not the what's that word, fatality and futility. So like I'm no longer living in the futility and the fatality of life. I am now in this bearing fruit, very fruitful life. And the more I focus on God's will for me and what I can contribute, the more fruitful my life becomes. It's the opposite of what our minds want to tell us. How am I going to get what I want if I don't go out and make it happen? But everything that we're reading is no, go do what God wants and wait and see what comes your way. Like you're going to see how everything changes. The order of operation is what we change. Go ahead, Bill.
And we know that that's acceptable, that last instruction, that we can ask if others will be helped, because it tells us in the very last paragraph. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do for the man who is still sick. That's a prayer that's inquiring from God specific instructions, but to be used for someone else's benefit. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. Listen to how humble this is. This is humility right here. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. We are not here to pull people away from their practice of faith. That's not what this is about. Some of us settle for, and it's not a bad thing. I don't mean settle like as if we're just settling, but some of us say, you know what? Alcoholics Anonymous is the direction I need. Only because here we get to discover this relationship with God. Religion wants to define God. Alcoholics Anonymous creates a dependency on that power, which is God. None of us can fully define or comprehend. And we talked about that this morning in a different meeting. The good news about that statement is, in the doctor's opinion, he gives a fair cross section of our membership. He talks about the different personality types or even psychological dispositions of the alcoholic. And in chapter 2, it talks about we come from all different walks of life, which, guess what? That would be a tremendous pull, POOL, for the society. We're just a small subcommittee or sub community of the world around us. So if none of us could fully define or comprehend that power, I believe what they're saying is neither can anyone else, because we're all human beings and we come from everywhere. So it's not just a whole bunch of myopic people that are all identical automatons ending up in the same place. We're all different people, and if not one of us individually could define that power, neither could anyone in the pulpit or the Vatican, although they tried to. Because if I got to get you to go along with me, I've got to get you to convince that you've got to be convinced that I'm right and I know what the hell I'm talking about, or you might go follow someone else like your good friend Jimmy Jones. I hope you don't, because he offers some very terrible alcohol or Kool-Aid. He wiped out a whole state of people. Okay, enough of that. There's a little humor. You won't find that on every other big book study, Ron, but you will find it here. I told you, if you want to know what Dr. Bob ate for breakfast, you got to go see one of those 8 o'clock people. This is the predecessors. Okay, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and commit to memory a few set prayers, because my mind is at a higher level. When I'm memorizing prayers or even quoting prayers inside of my mind, maybe I'm just not thinking about myself so much, which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. In our 12 and 12, they came up with the St. Francis prayer. And what it really was is, it talks about it in that book. They think that it was an expression of the experience he had rather than a petition for granting. Suggestions about, there are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. We don't care where you're getting it from. If it works for other people, it'll work for us, because no matter what, we never exceed humanness. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Not that they are right, but where they are right. And I looked up religious, and it means a monastic following. So it's not necessarily people who go to church or even get up every day and water their lawn 3 times a week at precisely 6:12. That may be religious, but that's not what they're talking about. Someone who's seeking a relationship with this power. Be quick to see where they're right and make use of what they offer, because they might be getting inspired themselves, just like we are. Do you want to say anything on that one, Chrissy? If not, I'm going to read it out.
Go for it.
Okay. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. Again, that can be an instruction or a promise. We constantly remind ourselves, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. So I'm constantly, a lot of times I'm doubtful, a lot of times I'm agitated, sometimes I'm both. What I do is I ask God for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show because we constantly think we are. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, and here they've taken the not mine out of it, thy will be done. We are then, listen to this, here's the promise of step 11. The bedevilments of alcoholism no longer dominate me or control me. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. The danger of, I'm paying attention. You tell me something's dangerous, I want to find out. So guess what? If I'm excited, if I'm full of fear, if I'm angry, if I'm worried, if I'm into self-pity or making foolish decisions, like going and signing a contract when I don't even have an income, guess what? I'm not paying attention and I'm in danger of something, at least getting a bankruptcy court, but most likely being separated from the power of feeling shame and returning back to alcohol. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. Recently, and I think I shared this with Chrissy, I discovered that energy might be a different name for power, which might be a different name for God. So if I'm not burning up the God in me, I'm not going to be so tired because I'm using the force, the energy that he's giving to me for the right reason. Why would I have to be tired? It's a constant flow of his spirit in and out of us. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way that we've just spent the last hour discussing. But this is not all. There's action and more action. Listen, not once does it say that I go up to a Tibetan monastery and spend my life making alms and seeking petition to God. This is all about action. Action will outweigh prayer and meditation all day, every day. You might not get someone to believe it, but if I continue to take inventory and I continue to help people, I promise you I would never have to say another prayer or meditate, and I believe God would direct my life exactly where he wanted it all the time. There's action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter, I don't want to say the next hour because it could take us a while. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. Chrissy?
Ooh, it works. It really does. Seeking God. God could and would if he were sought, which is part of the vital part of our recovery. But then there's the action, action, action. So we've got faith and works. Faith with works is alive. Faith without works is dead. And so we're just seeing where our faith is being misplaced in ourselves, and we're transferring it over to faith in God and God's power, God's love, God's way of life. That's going to give us victory over our difficulties. It's going to, that power, love, and way of life is going to relieve us of the bondage that we've been living in. It's going to restore us to sanity, and we're going to have all these beautiful experiences living in the fellowship of the Spirit, living in the Spirit, in the sunlight of the Spirit. So carry on, keep going, don't give up.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So it is said prayer is talking to God, meditation is listening to God. Prayer without meditation is just plain rude. All right, you guys, it's up to you now. We're going to stop the recording. Thank you, Rob, for the postings and the recording.